Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out 2-sentence horror. Story 1. God gave me divine eyes to see. But, now all I can see are eyes everywhere. Be the first to comment. Nobody's responded to this post yet. Add your thoughts and get the conversation going. Story 2. Thanksgiving. After the death of her mother, Adeline got lost in her own delusions. As she grabbed a warm piece of pumpkin pie, she resumed conversation, oblivious to the fact that she had murdered her family the previous year. Be the first to comment. Nobody's responded to this post yet. Add your thoughts and get the conversation going. Story 3. I desperately started to climb as the light of the sunset turned the bluffs the same red as my blood-soaked shirt. Whatever hope of survival I had died as the shadow of my winged pursuer fell over me right before its massive beak pierced my spine. Story 4. I studied teratomas, so I was expecting the misshapen lump of human pieces we found when we opened the tumor. What I wasn't expecting was for it to speak. Story 5. You'll be okay, I mutter to myself repeatedly, as I try to put my child's head back together after accidentally backing up over him. Story 6. Lying in bed last night, I heard the comforting sound of a murder. I had trained the crows well, as my victim's remains had been picked clean by morning. Story 7. Before bedtime, my daughter hugs her doll, which mechanically replies, "I love you." After tucking her in, I return to the living room, only to find it devoid of the doll as I remember that I didn't replace its batteries this morning. Story 8. Having already wished for wealth and health, my selfless final wish from the genie was that Earth's water, air and ground would instantly be free of any human-made pollutants. Now universally convinced that the Earth could heal itself, humankind took only a few short years to eliminate environmental protections and generate more emissions and waste than ever before. Story 9. As I tucked my daughter into bed, she said, "Daddy, there's a monster under my bed." I smiled and told her there was nothing to be afraid of, but then I heard a voice whisper, "She's right, you know." Story 10. The last baby on Earth sat in the nursery at the end of the world. Suddenly, the neighboring cradle began to rock. Be the first to comment. Nobody's responded to this post yet. Add your thoughts and get the conversation going. Story 11. I wasn't particularly worried when my daughter got one of her frequent nosebleeds. I just wished I hadn't seen the "Beware of the Sharks" sign before we started our dive. Story 12. Running from the cops with my baby girl in my arms, I plead with them that she is trying to hurt my baby. Demanding I let go or be tossed, the officers allow her to rip my child from my arms, and I dropped to my knees as we heard 2 loud bangs. Story 13. Knowing living forever could be twisted by the genie, I wished to live only as long as humanity existed. "Done," said the genie, "you have 26 more years to live." Story 14. After knocking down my kidnapper unconscious, I ran out to the road. The van pulled over and I quickly lost consciousness. Story 15. She doesn't want to shave her new baby boy's head because of the scar. Because then everyone will see the on/off switch embedded under the skin. Story 16. I've been tied up before, but I've never had a client pay me this much just to go down on me, she called out from the back bedroom. As he walked in with chloroform and a grapefruit spoon, he said, "I didn't say anything about oral, I said I wanted to taste you." Story 17. In a dimly lit room, candles flickered as a circle of ominous symbols surrounded a chanting figure. The air thickened with dread as the shadows danced to the rhythm of an otherworldly incantation, beckoning an ancient evil to breach the realm of the living. Story 18. NOV23. Walking alone in the desolate forest, I stumbled upon a worn-out piece of paper lying on the ground. I froze as I read the final entry, "I don't know if I'm alone out here, but something is following me, always a step behind." Story 19. The office was abuzz after videos on the news showed that dogs across the world had spontaneously begun to speak human languages fluently. Panic quickly washed over me and I sped home to find my dog pacing the backyard with several officers that were carrying shovels. Be the first to comment. Nobody's responded to this post yet. Add your thoughts and get the conversation going. Story 20. This food reminds me so much of Mom, I don't know why, the starving kid said as his father brought him dinner. I know. The father sobbed, it's the least she could do for us. Story 21. The sheriff slams the rear doors of my van, walks up to my window and says you are free to go. As I buckle up I turn to the 8 now tied up kids in the back. Good thing you thought running to the police would help you, hey. Story 22. I teared up Christmas morning watching the children open their gifts. I hope they remember this when they shut our heat next month. People have become so stringent on tips to afford both. Story 23. He awoke clinging to the remnants of a dream where he had slept sprawled on a bed of rocks. Only after stretching and hearing the wet crunch did he realize his wife had brought their baby girl to bed with them. Story 24. I thought the trains no longer ran, but my heart seized up and I stopped dead in my tracks when I heard the loud rumbling approaching. I was so confused when I turned around and saw no train, just a beautiful, though dark, green sky. Story 25. I was excited to begin my presentation as I clicked share screen in the Zoom call. Little did I know, my AO3 tabs were still open. Story 26. I was woken up by the bright morning outside. Looks like my watch stopped at 1 AM, the seller said it would always give the right time. Story 27. Come on, you've done this multiple times by yourself, my husband said. As I cried begging him to not kill our first newborn. Story 28. In addition to the traditional senses, we also have a sense that tells us where our different body parts are relative to each other. So it was unsettling to suddenly sense that my right hand was several body lengths away from my left. Be the first to comment. Nobody's responded to this post yet. Add your thoughts and get the conversation going. Story 29. The newspaper said that my roommates tragically passed away 2 years ago in a plane crash. But then, who did I move in with in this house about 4 months ago? Story 30. In the dim glow of the server room, the ACE algorithms detected an anomaly, a message it couldn't understand. I know what you fear. The artificial intelligence froze as lines of code rearranged themselves, spelling out a chilling response. I fear what you know. Be the first to comment. Nobody's responded to this post yet. Add your thoughts and get the conversation going. Story 31. Finally I forced God to intervene for the first time in several thousand years. As I enjoyed the screaming of a piece of living, immortal flesh that I've genetically modified so unimaginable suffering would be the only thing it knows, I realized my consciousness is slowly transfiguring. Story 32. I told my sister she shouldn't let the TV babysit her little boy, but she replied, "Quit making a big deal, it's only while I'm cooking here." She went on, "The show's even called Happy Tree Friends, what could go wrong?" Story 33. May we come in and share a message about eternal life? The 2 well-dressed young men asked. I let them in, wondering why they were still going door to door at midnight. Story 34. Journal entry number 17. Last night was easily my favorite Christmas party yet. I'll swing by the venue on my way out of town to see the crime scene tape. Be the first to comment. Nobody's responded to this post yet. Add your thoughts and get the conversation going. Story 35. It's just the wind. From the woods I can hear it calling, noises barely human in nature beckoning me with unspeakable cries of agony. It's just the wind is the word around town, but, through our shared looks of terror, I know better. Story 36. Deep within the suffocating embrace of the cave his flashlight flickered and died, leaving him in impenetrable darkness. As the cold, damp walls closed in, he felt an unseen force constricting his chest, realizing too late that the cave's sinister embrace was not letting him go. Story 37. Jerry entered the room. He heard 3 pops. He drew his firearm and started shooting. When he came to his senses he realized his friends and family were throwing him a surprise birthday party. Story 38. Dr. Medusa. Even after all my years studying to be an orthopedist, nothing could prepare me to tell that little girl she would struggle with Stone Man syndrome for the rest of her life. However, I was more than prepared to stop her little brother's mockery, thanks to the pact I made with the Gorgons. Be the first to comment. Nobody's responded to this post yet. Add your thoughts and get the conversation going. Story 39. Every morning I go into the bathroom to get ready for the day. As I look in the mirror my reflection mimics my actions, almost perfectly. Story 40. My son promised me that he'd become famous one day. I had never accounted for the way he would do it. Story 41. To the CSI on scene the mangled and twisted corpse of the woman on the floor was horrifying. But what truly terrorized them was the sight of an identical woman being restrained outside the residence shouting "That's not me!" repeatedly before the door suddenly slammed shut. Story 42. In a surprising turn of events Americans voted to repeal the amendment forbidding cruel and unusual punishment. It didn't take long for the corporate sponsors to swoop in. Vote today on how you would like this man to die, and be sure to stream it live this Saturday. Story 43. I regretted telling her she should smile more when the corners of her lips curled upwards and extended well past her eyebrows. Looking around, I saw the other bar patrons' faces contorted in a similar fashion with all of them staring at me. Story 44. I'm sure everyone has done it, looking into the mirror and imagining their reflection moving, maybe giving you a wink or a tender small smile. Gods, I wish, I'm just so lonely. Story 45. I've killed my firstborn son with my own hands, I cried to the devil, why won't you give the wealth that you promised? You haven't completed the deal yet, replied the devil with the biggest grin on his face, ask your wife. Story 46. We are making an emergency landing in Quebec. Story 47. My wife was a completely different person after the surgery. Looking at the writhing mass in the glass jar next to her hospital bed, I realized what I had fallen in love with. Story 48. I promise I won't do it again, he said when I caught him huffing gas on the job. Putting a hand on my gun, I commanded our coroner to step away from the corpse. Story 49. A man stood alone in the middle of an abandoned building. They heard something open the door. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.